That night began with a familiar quiet, but beneath the surface, everything was on the verge of changing forever. It started like any other night, yet I had no idea that everything between us was about to shift. Looking back now, it feels like every moment before had been leading to that single point, the night that changed everything. Daniel and I had always been close, closer than most brothers, being twins. People assumed we were the same thoughts, the same habits, the same personalities, but we weren't, not really. Daniel was always the louder, bolder one, while I preferred to hang back and observe. We were mirror images in appearance, but inside it felt like we were looking through warped glass. Our parents had gone out of town for the weekend. It was supposed to be a regular Friday night, just the two of us at home, but things never stayed regular. When we spent too much time together, the house felt emptier, quieter than usual. Maybe that's why the energy between us felt different that night. Like there was an unspoken charge in the air, something neither of us could name, but both could feel. We spent most of the evening in the living room pretending to watch a movie. I say pretending because I couldn't recall a single thing that happened on the screen. My mind was somewhere else entirely, and if I was honest, it was on him. I stole glances whenever I thought wasn't looking, but every time our eyes met, it felt like he had been doing same. He'd smile, that lopsided grin that always made it hard for me to look away, and I'd force myself back to Theth. But the tension kept building like a steady rise of a wave before it crashes. Then out of nowhere, Daniel broke the silence. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" he asked, his voice low, almost hesitant. It wasn't like him to ask questions like that. Daniel wasn't that type to dwell on what ifs or could have been, but something in his tone made me pause. "Different how?" I asked, unsure of where he was going with this. He shrugged, not meeting my eyes this time. "I don't know, like if things between us had been different." There it was, that charge in the air stronger now. I could feel my heartbeat quicken, though I didn't know why. I didn't even fully understand what he meant, or maybe he did. I did. Maybe I just didn't want to admit it. I kept my voice steady. "What do you mean by that?" Daniel didn't answer right away. He just stood up, stretched, and muttered something about getting a drink. I watched him leave the room, a strange mix of anticipation and confusion twisting inside me. When he came back, he carried 2 beers without a word. He handed one to me and sat back down on the couch, closer this time. I couldn't help but notice how near our knees were, almost touching, and I felt a warmth between us that hadn't been there before. I took a sip, hoping it would steady my thoughts, but it didn't. Daniel was the first to break silence again. "We never talk about stuff, you know." "Not really," I nodded, unsure what to say. He was right. We had always been close, but there were things we never talked about, things we danced around, but never fully faced. And now it felt like those things were right in front of us, demanding to be acknowledged. "What stuff?" I asked, playing dumb. Maybe if I didn't acknowledge it, it wouldn't become real. He let out a small laugh, but it didn't reach his eyes, you know? What I mean, I didn't respond. I couldn't. Instead, it took another sip of beer, hoping it would numb whatever it was I was feeling, but it didn't. If anything, I totally made it worse. Daniel turned fully toward me now, high-sized, searching mind for something I wasn't sure I could give. "It doesn't have to be weird, you know," he said softly. I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly dry. "What doesn't this?" He gestured between us. Whatever this is, and there it was, the thing we had both been avoiding, the thing neither of us had dared to name, but now it was out in the open, and there was no going back. A rush of emotions hit me all at once: fear, confusion, excitement. I didn't know how to respond. I didn't even know if I could, but Daniel wasn't waiting for me to say anything. He just smiled at that same lopsided grin and leaned back in the couch as if saying it out loud had been enough. But the story, it didn't end there. It was only the beginning. The night stretched on, the tension between us growing thicker with every passing minute. We talked more, not about it, but about everything else: childhood memories, school, little things we hadn't thought about in years. It felt like we were circling round something bigger, something inevitable. but neither of us was willing to make that first move. At some point, I suggested we head to bed. It was late and I couldn't stand the weight of that tension any longer. I thought maybe if we slept things would feel normal again in the morning. But Aussie headed toward my room. Danielle followed. "You mind if I crash in here tonight?" he asked. His voice casual, though something behind it made my heart race. We hadn't shared a room since we're kids, but I didn't see any Riasanto say no. "Yeah, sure," I replied, trying to sound normal. But nothing felt normal anymore, not at all. At first, I told myself not to think much of it after all. We'd shared rooms countless times when we were younger, but this time felt different. There was a tension between us, something unspoken, something neither of us wanted to confront. Yet, both of us felt creeping in. He tossed his things onto the floor near the foot of my bed and flopped down beside me, arms behind his head, staring at the ceiling. We didn't say much at first. We just lay there in the dark. The only sound the soft rustle of the covers as we adjusted ourselves. I could feel him. Daniel lay close, the mattress dipping slightly under his weight, and I found myself hyper-aware of every small movement he made. It was strange. Usually when we were around each other with each other, there had always been a natural ease and unspoken understanding. But now every breath, every shift in Thebes, every glance between us carried a new weight. I tried to focus on anything else, but my thoughts kept circling back to our conversation in the living room. He hadn't said much, but the implications were there, heavy, undeniable. I didn't want to overanalyze every little thing he'd said, but it wasn't possible not to. Eventually, Daniel spoke, his voice cutting through the thick silence like a knife. "Do you remember when we were kids how we'd stay up all night talking about the stupidest things?" His tone was softer, no, thoughtful, as if he was trying to capture the simplicity of those times. It feels like we haven't done that in forever. I smiled in the dark event though he couldn't see me. "Yeah, I remember. We'd stay up until mom or dad yelled at us to go to sleep, and even then, we just whisper until one of us passed out." Daniel chuckled softly, the sound low and comforting. "I miss that." There was something wistful in his voice, something that tugged at me in a way I couldn't explain. It wasn't just nostalgia. There was an undercurrent of something more, something deeper, and it made my chest tighten. "Why do you think we stopped?" he asked after a moment, his voice barely above a whisper. Now, I didn't even answer for that. Somewhere along the way, life had gotten in the way. School, friends, growing up. We stopped being kids who could stay up all night without a care in the world. But more than that, we had grown into ourselves, into different people, and maybe, just maybe, we had both felt this tension long before either of us was ready to acknowledge it. "I don't know," I finally said. "I guess we just got busy. Life happened." He didn't respond right away, and I wondered if he was thinking the same things I was. It was easier to stay silent, to avoid the uncomfortable truths lurking just beneath the surface. But then he shifted closer, just enough that our arms brushed and I felt my breath catch in my throat. It was such a small, innocent movement, beauty sent a jolt through me. My mind raced with thoughts I didn't want to entertain, emotions I wasn't ready to confront. "Do you ever wonder what if things had been different?" He said quietly, his voice barely audible. Audible as if he was afraid of things were. I stared up at the ceiling, my heart pounding in my chest. "Different though?" He hesitated, and I could feel the weight of his words hanging in the air between us. When he finally spoke again, his voice carried something I couldn't quite place. Uncertainty maybe, or vulnerability, like if we hadn't grown apart, if we'd stayed close, if we'd kept talking like we used to. I turned my head to look at him, but he kept his gaze fixed on the ceiling, his expression unreadable in the dim light. There was something in the way he said it, something that made me think he wasn't just talking about us as brothers. There was something more, something deeper, something I wasn't sure I was ready to confront. "Daniel, what are you trying to say?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. He didn't answer right away. Instead, heavily turned his head and met my eyes. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. There was something in his gaze that made my heart race, something that made it impossible to look away. I don't know, he said at last, his voice soft, almost uncertain. I guess I just missed the way things used to be. His words lingered in the space between us, heavy, charged with an emotion I couldn't name. I wanted to say something, anything to break the tension that had been building all night. But no words came. Instead, we lay there insolence. The distance between us felt both vast and impossibly close. The minutes ticked by and I could feel myself getting lost in thoughts I didn't want to have, questions I didn't want to ask. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between us. Something that couldn't be undone. Eventually, I closed my eyes, hoping that I hoped sleep would come, that it would take me away from the confusion swirling in my head. But it didn't. Instead, I lay there hyper-aware of every breath, every shift in the bed, every brush of his arm against mine. After what felt like eternity, Daniel shifted again, turning onto his side to face me. I could feel his eyes on me, even though mine were still closed, and the weight of his gaze made my heart race. "You're not asleep, are you?" he hissed, his voice low, soft, barely more than a whisper. I opened my eyes and turned my head to meet his gaze. "No," he smiled, a small lopsided grin I'd seen 1,000 times before, but this time it felt different, more intimate somehow. Me neither. There was something in the way he looked at me, something that made me chest tighten, that made the air between us feel heavy with unspoken words. I didn't know what to do, didn't how to respond to the intensity in his eyes, so I did what I always did when I was uncertain. I deflected. "Wes, I'll probably get some sleep," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. But Daniel didn't move. He didn't even look away. "Yeah," he agreed softly. "We should." Yet neither of us closed our eyes, neither of us turned away, neither of us ended the night. We just stayed there side by side, the silence growing heavier with every passing second. And that's when I realized something. It wasn't just me who felt it, Daniel felt it too. That pull, that tension, that unspoken thing neither of us had words for, but both of us knew lost here. It wasn't just in my head. There was more between us than either of us had admitted, and it scared me. But it also excited me in a way I didn't fully understand. Eventually, Daniel broke the silence. "I didn't want things to go back to normal," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do you?" I stared at him, my heart pounding. I didn't know how to answer. I didn't even know what the right answer would be. But I knew one thing for certain. Things weren't going back to normal, not after tonight, and somehow, deep down, I didn't want them to. The night felt endless, stretched Edwin moments that made my skin prickle with something I couldn't quite name. As we lay there side by side, everything had changed. I could feel his breathing slow and steady, like he was trying to calm himself down, but underneath it, there was something else. An undercurrent that made the silence between us feel charged. It wasn't just quiet, it was heavy, filled with everything we weren't saying, every thought we didn't dare voice. The space between us felt smaller somehow, like gravity itself was tugging us closer to something neither of us had been ready for. Then he shifted, his arm brushing against mine. At first, I thought it was an accident, but then he did it again, this time deliberate. His hand found mine under the covers, fingers tentative at first before closing around them. The air felt too thick, the moment stretched and fragile. This wasn't just a touch, it was the thing that had been building for so long, too long to keep pretending otherwise. My heart pounded, my thoughts tangled between confusion and anticipation. His voice broke the quiet, soft and uncertain. "Do you want this?" His fingers tightened lightly around mine. I swallowed hard, words failing me, so I just nodded. That was all he needed. He turned fully toward me, eyes searching mine. There was hesitation there, but also something deeper, something we had both been avoiding. His hand slid up my arm, slow and deliberate, testing the boundary of whatever this was. My skin prickled under his touch, a shiver running through me. I didn't move, didn't stop him. I just let the moment happen. His hand reached my jaw, tilting my head gently so our eyes met. In his gaze, I saw it all. The fear, the excitement, the need. And then he leaned in, not sudden, not rushed, but careful, like he was giving me every chance to topple away. I couldn't, I leaned into him. And when our lips finally met, it felt like the answer to a question we'd both been carrying for far too long. His lips met mine, sending a jolt of electricity through me. At first, the kiss was soft, tentative, but with each passing second, it deepened, more certain, more urgent. His hand slid to the back of my neck, pulling me closer, and I leaned into him, my whole body responding in ways I hadn't expected. When he pulled back slightly, his breath was warm against my lips. "Are you sure?" he whispered. I nodded, words failing me, but he could see the answer in my eyes. That was when everything shifted. He kissed me again, and this time there was no hesitation, no holding back, just us completely. Every touch carried weight, every glance spoke louder than words. The space around us seemed to disappear, leaving only the two of us, hearts racing, breaths uneven. A connection that felt deeper than anything I had ever known. It wasn't just about the kiss anymore. It was about trust, about finally letting go of the fears we had carried for so long. He looked at me like he was really seeing me for the first time, and in that moment, I felt the same. Time blurred, the only thing that mattered was him, the closeness, the warmth. The way he made me feel alive in a way I hadn't realized I was missing. Nothing else mattered. For a long moment, we just lay there side by side, breathing heavy in the quiet. Neither of us spoke, and we didn't need to. The air between us was thick with everything left unsaid. The things that didn't need words. He was the first to move, shifting slightly, so he was lying closer to me, his arm draped casually over my side. He didn't look at me, but I could feel the weight of the moment settling over both of us. I didn't know what to say. I wasn't even sure if there was anything to say. But deep down I knew one thing. I didn't regret any of it. He turned his head, eyes searching mine, looking for something, reassurance maybe, or understanding. I wasn't sure. But whatever it was, I saw it reflected in his gaze, the same thing I felt inside. "This changes everything, doesn't it?" he asked softly, his voice carrying a weight I couldn't quite place. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. It did change everything. There was no going back now. No pretending it hadn't happened. And yet, there was something else too, something unexpected, relief. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't hiding, I wasn't pretending. I wasn't running from the truth of what I felt, or what we both felt. Morning light seeped through the curtains, casting a soft glow across the room. I blinked against the brightness, trying to shake off the lingering heaviness of sleep. For a brief moment, I forgot where I was, forgot what had happened. Then reality came rushing back, and my heart skipped. He was still there, close beside me, calm and steady. The sight of him stirred something deep inside, a warmth, a sense of belonging, a certainty I hadn't felt in a long time inside me. Along with that familiar warmth came a new emotion, uncertainty. What now? I turned my head slightly to look at him. He was still asleep, his face relaxed and peaceful, as if the world hadn't shifted beneath our feet. For a moment, I just watched him, their eyes and fall of his chest, the way his hair fell messily over his forehead. How looked the same, yet nothing felt the same. Part of me wanted to slip out off to create some space before he woke up, before we had to face the reality of what had happened. But another part of him, the part that had been driving everything between us, didn't want to move at all. I wanted to stay there in quiet, in the safety of the moment before the world intruded. I couldn't avoid it forever. He would wake soon and we'd have to talk to figure out what came next. Daniel stirred beside me. His eyes fluttered open, still caught somewhere between sleep and wakefulness. Then his gaze found mine, and I saw at the moment it all clicked into place for him. His expression softened, and a small smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. "Morning," he said, his voice rough with sleep. "Morning," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady, though my heart was racing. We lay there for a moment, neither of us speaking. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was charged with everything that had happened the night before, everything that still needed to be said. Daniel shifted, propping himself up on one elbow to look at me more closely. There was something different in his eyes, something deeper, more serious. You okay? He asked, his voice softer now, filled with concern, and nodded. Though I wasn't sure how to answer, I was okay in the sense that nothing felt wrong. But I wasn't sure what to do with the storm of emotions swirling inside me. I don't regret it, Daniel said, breaking the silence. His words were quiet, but firm, as if he needed to say them, needed to make them real. I knew. I turned to face him fully, searching his eyes for any trace of doubt or hesitation. There was none. He was being honest, brutally, beautifully honest. I don't either, I admitted, surprising even myself. Despite the confusion, despite uncertainty, I didn't regret what had happened, not one bit. Daniel's smile widened slightly and the tension in the room eased just a little. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from my forehead in a gesture so intimate, so familiar that my chest ached. What does this mean? I asked quietly, the question burning in the back of my mind since we'd woken up. Daniel's expression shifted, becoming more serious. I don't know, he admitted after a moment, but I don't want to act like nothing's changed. His words echoed my own unspoken thoughts. I didn't want to go back to the way things were before. I didn't want to erase that connection we'd found, but I also didn't know how to move forward from here. It's complicated, I whispered. I know, Daniel replied, his hand still resting lightly against my face. But we can figure it out together. There was something so simple, so honest in his words that the weight on my chest eased. Just a little. Maybe we didn't need all the answers right now. Maybe it was enough that we both knew what we wanted from each other, for each other. For a moment, we just laid there staring at one another, letting the silence speak for us. The woe outside seemed distant, muted, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were exactly where we were supposed to be, but the moment couldn't last forever. Eventually, we have to leave this room, face the reality beyond it. Our parents would be back soon, and the world would resume its rhythm soon, and we couldn't stay in this bubble of quiet forever. I guess we'll have to take it one day at a time, I said, breaking the silence. Daniel nodded. I's never leaving mine. Yeah, one day at a time. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was something. It was a start. As the day went on, we fell into an easy rhythm, as if nothing had changed. But everything had. Every look, every gesture, every small touch felt charged with a new kind of intensity. I noticed how much closer we stayed to each other, how naturally we gravitated toward one another. By evening, I felt strangely at peace. The confusion and fear that had clouded my mind earlier had settled into something quieter, something more manageable. Maybe it was because Daniel had made it clear we didn't have to figure everything out immediately. We could take our time, but as the hours ticked by, a new anxiety crept in. Our parents would be home soon, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the real world was closing in on us. It was one thing to be alone with Daniel, to feel like we were in our own little world. It was another entirely to face the reality of what had happened, of what it meant for us going forward. When the sound of the car pulling into the driveway reached us, my stomach twisted into knots. Daniel shot me a calm but serious look. You ready? I wasn't sure I was, but I nodded. What else could I do? The front door opened and the familiar sounds of our parents' voices filled the house. I could hear them chatting, laughing about their trip, completely unaware of the seismic shift that had occurred in their absence. Daniel and I exchanged a brief glance before heading downstairs to greet them. Walking side by side, I felt a quiet sense of solidarity. Whatever happened next, we'd face it together. Our parents didn't seem to notice anything out of the ordinary. They hugged us, asked about our weekend, laughing and talking as if nothing had changed, and for now, that was enough. The weekend passed and our parents told us about theirs. It all felt so normal to normal given everything that had happened. I kept expecting them to notice, to sense the change in the air, but they didn't, and that left me with a mixture of relief and unease. Was it really going to be this easy to hide what had happened? As the evening wore on, I found myself retreating into my thoughts, barely paying attention to the conversation around me. Daniel seemed more at ease, more comfortable with the charade. But I could feel the weight of what had happened pressing down on me. It was getting harder to ignore. The days that followed were strange. In some ways, nothing had changed. We still went through our usual routines, still saw our friends, still odd and joked with our parents, but in other ways, everything had changed. The secret we were keeping hung over us like a shadow, coloring every interaction, every moment. At night, when the house was quiet, Daniel and I would retreat to our room. It was like the weight of the day lifted just a little in the dark. We didn't have to pretend. We didn't have to act like nothing had changed. We could just be. It became our routine. During that day, we played the role of brothers, keeping everything on the surface, hiding what was simmering beneath. But at night, in the quiet of our room, we let ourselves slip back into that closeness, that intensity. It became part of us, woven into the fabric of who we're together. The world outside had continued its relentless pace, but into those small, stolen moments, time seemed so slow. We existed in a space that belonged only to us. We didn't need to explain it. We didn't need anyone's approval. We just let it be, trusting that what we had was enough, no matter where life would take us.